Who suffers the most in case of a breakup or divorce? Another great question, and the answer is just as counterintuitive. If we're being brutal and looking at the research, the suffering is divided along a clear fault line. Men suffer more emotionally and physically from a breakup or divorce, while women suffer more economically and practically. It's not that one gender wins the suffering Olympics. It's that they lose in completely different, devastating ways. Let's get into it. Why men often suffer more. The emotional and health catastrophe. This is the great paradox. The gender that benefits more from being in the relationship also tends to crash harder when it ends. 1. The collapse of their emotional infrastructure. Remember, men are far more likely to rely on their partner as their sole emotional confidant. Their wife is often their therapist, social coordinator, and only true best friend. When that relationship ends, that entire support system vanishes overnight. Women, on average, have stronger, more diverse friend networks to fall back on for emotional support. A man is often left profoundly isolated. This leads directly to the next point. 2. Dramatically worse health outcomes. The numbers here are frightening. Divorced men see a surge in mortality rates. They have higher rates of suicide. The suicide rate for divorced men is significantly higher than for married men and divorced women. Depression and anxiety. They are more likely to be diagnosed with clinical depression following a divorce. Substance abuse. There's a marked increase in alcoholism and drug abuse among recently divorced men. Physical health. They often stop managing their health, skip doctor's appointments, and adopt worse diets, leading to long-term decline. It's as if the health benefit they gain from marriage gets violently withdrawn with interest. 3. The Mr. Mom struggle. In cases where men get shared or full custody, studies show they often report higher levels of stress and feeling overwhelmed than single mothers. Why? Because they never built the foundational skills. They are trying to instantly become proficient at the daily, relentless domestic and emotional labor that their wife may have managed for years. They're learning on the job during the most stressful time of their life. 4. Identity loss. For many men, especially of older generations, their identity is deeply tied to being a provider and the head of a family. Divorce dismantles that identity completely. They can lose their sense of purpose, which exacerbates the emotional and health crisis. So, for a man, a divorce can feel like an amputation of his entire support system and identity, leading to a severe health and emotional crisis. Why women often suffer more. The financial and practical freefall. While a man's suffering is often internal and health-related, a woman's is external and economic. It's a tangible, dramatic drop in her standard of living. 1. The brutal economic reality. This is the most well-documented area. It's called the divorce penalty or financial shock. Standard of living. Studies consistently show that a woman's standard of living drops by an average of 20 to 40% after a divorce. For a man, it often increases by 10 to 15%. Why? The motherhood penalty. Women are more likely to have taken career breaks or reduced hours to raise children. This impacts their lifetime earning potential, savings, and social security benefits. They are trying to re-enter the workforce or increase their hours from a position of weakness. Child support is not alimony. People confuse these. Child support is for the kids, and it often doesn't cover half the true cost of raising them. Alimony, spousal support, is far less common today and is usually temporary. Many women are trying to support themselves and their children on a single income that is permanently handicapped by their time out of the workforce. 2. The overwhelming burden of single motherhood. Even if she has joint custody, the mother is still the primary parent in the vast majority of cases. This means she retains the immense mental load and logistical nightmare of coordinating their lives, often with less time to work and earn money. The responsibility is crushing and unrelenting. 3. The housing instability. Women are more likely to be the ones who have to leave the family home, especially if they can't afford the mortgage on their own income. This uproots them and the children, creating massive instability. So, for a woman, divorce often means an immediate and precipitous plunge into financial precarity, coupled with the immense pressure of being the primary caregiver. The brutal conclusion. So who suffers the most? They both do, but in a vicious trade-off. He suffers an internal crisis. His health fails, he becomes isolated and depressed, and he loses his emotional anchor. She suffers an external crisis. Her bank account plummets, her workload doubles, and she faces a constant practical struggle to keep a roof over her and her children's heads. It's a choice between a heart attack and a bankruptcy. Which is worse? It depends on your perspective. But if you put a gun to my head and force me to answer, I'd say the suffering is more acute and dangerous for men in the short term, due to the suicide and health risks, but more chronically draining and life-altering for women in the long term, due to the permanent financial setback and relentless burden of single parenthood. Ultimately, the research shows that divorce is a lose-lose scenario. It's just that the losses are distributed differently, highlighting the very different roles and dependencies that were present in the marriage itself. The person who benefited more from the relationship has the farthest to fall.